Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today, we are taking a look back at what is, in my opinion at least, one of the most disappointing premium ship releases in recent years, and that is the Tier 8 Premium American Battlecruiser, the Constellation. Now, the Constellation was released a little over a year ago to not great reviews. I had a generally positive impression of the ship because the history behind it is very cool for me, and at the time there was quite a bit of potential in her playstyle, but a lot has changed in a year, and her weaknesses have, well, really hindered her long-term playability, shall we say. I mean, honestly, how many times do you even run into a Constellation in-game? In playing the matches to get background footage for you guys, I didn't run across a single one at all, and I was playing a Constellation, and it's supposed to try and mirror you as much as you can, as much as it can. But of course, I play a lot of higher tier, and you really don't see a lot of these ships anymore. Now, let's talk about the historical side of the ship, the part that's really cool for me. So, the Constellation was supposed to be the second of the Lexington-class battle cruisers. This is what the Lexington-class aircraft carriers were supposed to be. But because of the Washington Naval Treaty, they had to stop constructing these battle cruisers. They were building 6 of these ships, and Constellation was supposed to be the second one, with the whole number CC2. But when the Naval Treaty got signed, they stopped construction on the hulls they had laid down, and they chose the Lexington and the Saratoga to become these aircraft carriers. They were converted into the Lexington-class aircraft carriers. The first aircraft carriers were the first fleet aircraft carriers for the United States Navy. And the hulls of the Constellation and, the Ranger and the Constitution and the United States were broken up. So, what you see right here isn't the original plan. The original plan, of course, was much more in that 1920s American ship design scheme. I'll throw a picture of it up on screen right here. What we see here today is a what-if modernization of the Lexington-class battle cruisers. So this is a post-Pearl Harbor refit of these battle cruisers, which obviously if these ships had been completed, or maybe if they did convert 2 of the aircraft carriers and maybe kept the hulls around, and once World War II broke out, they decided to go ahead and finish a couple of these battle cruisers, since after the attack on Pearl Harbor, most of the capital, well, all the battleships were out of commission for quite some time. This is what we would have gotten in one way, shape, or another, according to Wargaming, at least. And in my mind, that is very cool. I like seeing these what-if historical ships. What if the Lexington-class battle cruisers had been completed? I like seeing this. These are the type of paper ships that I think are really cool, not these, completely made-up designs that were never laid down or anything like that. These are the paper ships that I like. So that's what I do like about the ship in terms of its history. Now, the ship in game, oh boy. So, a good TLDR description of this ship is it's a stretched Colorado that's fast and has torpedoes and radar. And honestly, that's a pretty good summarization of this ship, because that is kind of what it is. Now, she does have the same main battery guns as the Colorado, with one difference. They do have Battlecruiser Dispersion, which puzzles me because Battlecruiser Dispersion is really accurate. It's not quite Cruiser Dispersion, where the shells barely fly around at all, but it's a lot better than Battleship Dispersion. Battleship Dispersion, as I'm sure most of you Battleship mains know, your shells fly all over the place, especially from like Tier 5 to Tier 7. When you get to Tier 8, the shells start to behave a little bit better, and then obviously this being a Tier 8 battlecruiser with Battlecruiser Dispersion, you'd expect the shells to be pretty consistent. And well, they're not, from my experience. I don't know if every time I take my Constellation out, RNG just says, you know what, nope, I'm not giving this man any good dispersion, because it's not great. It's really not. And I understand it's Tier 8. I understand that it can't be laser accurate, but good lord, I would just like for my shells to go where I aim at times. Now, what I have found is that when you have something broadside, generally the dispersion is more than good enough to get most of your shells to hit, and that's all well and good. But of course, unless you're playing against a bunch of brain dead teammates, they're obviously going to angle to you. Which fine, as long as I can get a couple of shells to go into a superstructure and chunk them, 3 to 5k a salvo, that's fine. But most of the times with me, this dispersion is so bad that I can't even hit their superstructure. And from like 4 kilometers away too, I'll still be struggling to hit a ship that's slightly angled in. Because the gaps in the shells are so wide, an entire North Carolina can fit between them. That's just been my experience with the thing, and that's exceptionally frustrating. Granted, you can solve this problem by, of course, just, smacking W and getting in there, which the Constellation can do. Should it do it? And that brings me to the second point about it. While it's a battlecruiser and has a fast 33 knot base speed, and you throw the flag on there and get it going even faster, it is a battlecruiser, and unlike the British or the Germans, doesn't really have much to make up for its battlecruiser armor. The ship, first off, is huge. It is 27 millimeters, so you have that going for you. It's not 25 like some higher tier battlecruisers are, so you can still, I won't say safely tank 15 millimeters, but 15 millimeters, 15-inch guns. But you can bow tank 15-inch guns. But the issue is they don't even need to shoot your bow, because look at this thing. The amount of freeboard that this ship has is insane. It's a massive target, and it feels like pretty much from any angle, the enemy shells will find a way to bite into your armor, which is kind of infuriating a lot of times. Now, yes, it is a battlecruiser, and that's supposed to be its trade-off, its survivability, but having 27 millimeters of armor on something in a battleship slot in a tier 8 placement, that's already pretty rough, because again, this ship can and will see tier 10 games. And obviously there's plenty at tier 8, 9, and 10 that can go right through 27 millimeters of armor. So that by itself, in my opinion, would be enough, just, having 27 millimeter plating. But, of course, with the design of the ship itself, it is, massive. So, there's not much you can do there. But there is something that you could have done, wargaming, to make this ship a little bit better. One of the other drawbacks of being a battlecruiser is that it doesn't get the full set of heal charges. With the Constellation, you get one less charge of your heal than normal. So, if I didn't have Discount Superintendent on my Constellation, I would only have 3 charges of heals in the background footage here. Which obviously sucks. This is one of the few ships that I actually burn through all of my heals in almost every game. Something that you'll hear some players that don't take Superintendent, or whatever the commander skill is now. I know it's something else, but guys, I've been playing this game for 6 years, and for 4 years it's been Superintendent, for 2 years it's been whatever it is now. But anyway, they'll say, I don't ever use all my heals in every single match, which is a pretty good argument for a ship with good armor. But in the Constellation, every match, I feel like I go through every single one of my heals, because of how squishy this ship is and how it eats pins at really weird angles. So that's a bit of an issue. I feel like in today's World of Warships, with how the ship performs, you could definitely give it that additional charge of a heal, and it certainly wouldn't make it broken. It would probably make her a lot more survivable and get her through many more matches. So Wargame, if you're listening, there's that idea. Now, something you might have caught on earlier on is that I said this ship has radar and torpedoes. She does. She does have 1 rack of torpedoes at her stern on both sides. These torpedoes go on for 9.2 kilometers, and they travel at 55 knots, so they're slow, but they have good range. And they do 16,633 maximum damage per torp. So you have longer range torpedoes for a battleship. I wouldn't say they're exactly long range. I mean, 9 kilometers is pretty far, but it's not like, they're 20, 15 kilometers. They're definitely long enough to where you can chunk them down like a gap or something where you think a DD might be coming out. And, they're so slow. Sometimes slow torpedoes can work quite well because people don't expect them. players really don't expect, the sea mines to come jogging around the corner. That being said, too, they also can be used in brawling situations, like you should have seen in the first match in the background. If you can get there, because again, the ship's armor is lackluster, and her side armor is so thin, pretty much any battleship that catches your side will citadel you, so that's another rough spot. So, yeah. Now, the radar, she does have radar. She does have American radar, which is nice on paper. It's American radar, 10 kilometers, 30-second action time. Now, the big thing about the radar is getting in range to use it. Because of the nature of the ship, typically you don't want to really get within 10 kilometers of anything, because you're going to get chunked because you're in a massive squishy ship. The turret angles aren't that great on the guns, and yeah, so why do you want to get close? Now in the first match, I kind of just said screw it, because it looked like there was maybe 2, maybe 3 ships out there. I thought I could get in and take at least 2 of the 3 out, and well, as you guys saw, I thankfully did. But in, of course, most situations, you don't really want to do that. Now, if it's a situation where, let's say, you're pushing an island, there's maybe a DD on the other side of the island, you could pop that and get them spotted. Or like you guys saw with the Vermont, he was in smoke, popped radar, got him spotted, got my shells in his sides, and got him sunk. So it does have use, but it's not something you can make a lot of use out of, especially when you get double up tier to tier 10. So that's a little rough. And again, keep in mind that this thing can and will see tier 10 quite a bit. Now, if you are lucky enough to get in a top tier game, yes, the ship is quite good. Of course, any ship at top tier performs exceptionally well. You can imagine seeing this thing and being in a tier 6 game with slow battleships, ships that you really don't care about their armor because you have 16-inch guns, you have torpedoes, you have radar. It is quite good when it can get top tier, but doesn't really happen too much at all. Of course, it's tier 8. Granted, with the way that tier 9 has been kind of screwed, you do get a fair few matches where you are top, well, not really top tier, you're mid tier, but there's only like 2 tier 9 ships, so you're kind of top tier, but you're dealing with tier 7 ships, so it's not the worst situation. But just given the nature of the ship, there's a couple of tier 9 battleships that are in the match can make your life quite miserable, and that's just for right now. Of course, things can change. They might tweak the matchmaker, they might do something with super ships to change their matchmaking, so I wouldn't say that's the thing you could really bank on for the Constellation. It is, again, really disappointing for me because it's a really cool ship, really cool historical ship. I really like the design. I like seeing it in-game. I just wish it was a little bit better, or giving it some 32 strips somewhere on its side armor. I mean, Wargaming has bent the rules with, armor design for years now and breaking off from the historical designs. And it is a refit anyway, so who's to say they wouldn't have increased the armor on the sides or on the torpedo bulges or something, But yeah, it's just kind of a miserable experience. And I do also think, too, that just giving it another charge of its heal would be a very easy way to help it in today's World of Warships, maybe giving it a quicker cooldown time on its heal. It does have, just let me double check, it does have a 76-second reload time, so maybe you crank that down to like, what's the Massachusetts is? It's what, in the, 38 seconds. If they would either do that, give it another charge, I think that would help it out a lot. Again, even with that improved heal, giving it the improved heal and an additional charge, I don't think it would really be overpowered because it's still going to get the absolute crap chunked out of it the second it pokes around and there's something with decently sized guns waiting for it. Again, just the way that the ship is designed, it eats pins from every angle, and of course being 27 millimeters everywhere on the ship, it's going to get farmed down by every Tom, Dick, and Harry with a light cruiser at tier 8+. So, sadly, that is to say the Constellation. Obviously, I would avoid getting it. If you do pick it up in a container or something, it's not, a terrible ship that I would say let rot in port. give it a spin, see how you feel about it. If you get lucky enough to get a mid-tier or definitely a top-tier game, you might have you'll probably have a pretty good match, but it is exceptionally frustrating, and I wouldn't pay outright the full asking price of $48 US for it. So guys, my 2 cents on the Constellation, how it's doing in today's World of Warships. Let me know in the comments down below. How have you had how good of a time have you had in your Constellation? If you have even picked one up, let me know what you guys think about that in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful, what's today? Thursday. Yeah, I filmed these like 2 days in advance, and, you know, time gets a little blurry sometimes. So you guys have a wonderful Thursday, a wonderful rest of your week, and I hope to catch you guys in the next one.